Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me. Today we're taking a first look at a new watch from Unimatic. This is an Italian brand that is known for their kind of highly conceptual dive watch designs. I really enjoy what they do. Last week they released a new Toolwatch collection, which represents a new family for the brand. And I really love what they're trying to do here with this collection, which is retain the distinctive design DNA that they've developed with their existing models while bringing in a measure of practicality without losing that identity. It's a collection overall that I'm really excited about. And today I have my hands on one of them, the UT1 GMT. This is a collection that launched with 4 watches. There's a time-only example, and then there is a GMT with a date example, which we have here. Now, they are each done in 2 different configurations. One with a rotating bezel and a bezel insert that's fully indexed, and the other with a fixed brushed bezel piece. This is the UT1, and it uses pretty much the same case that we've seen over in the U1. It measures 41 millimeters in diameter, 49 millimeters from lug to lug, and they list it at 13.2 millimeters in thickness, but it's a bit closer to 14 millimeters in thickness by my calipers, about 13.8 to be exact. It's a substantial case, but it's a wearable case. And I actually really like the angular design of the watch. There's a lot of interesting areas of this watch to take in, and it works pretty well on the wrist. One thing that I will comment on here is the lug. I wish that the lug had a slight downward slope to it to wrap around the wrist a little bit more. As it is now, it's kind of a perfectly straight horizontal take here at the bottom of the case profile. But overall, I would still consider this a very wearable case. I like this case a lot. One other thing to note about this watch is that it uses a 22 millimeter lug span. So it does sit a little bit wider and a little bit more muscular on the wrist. Now this collection is the Toolwatch collection, which is, yes, maybe a little bit on the nose, but they are really trying to make a point here that these are very robust, tested watches. These are tested to meet the MIL STD-810 standard, which is used by the US Department of Defense. So this watch has gone through a lot of testing. In particular, it survived 26 drops from a height of 4 feet onto hard concrete and survived. And that is due to an in-house designed 360-degree TPU protection system that the Ronda 515 quartz movement sits within. And I suspect that it is the use of that sleeve that keeps the case as bulky as it is. Of course, we have seen this case elsewhere in their collection using mechanical movements as well. I don't mind the use of the quartz movement here. I think it fits the theme of this watch perfectly well. And it brings a couple great complications to the mix in the process. There is a date aperture at 6 o'clock, and then there is an aperture, a curved, larger aperture for the 24-hour display up at 12 o'clock. Now, this is an interesting display. We've seen this before from other brands. So the design itself is nothing new. I do like how it looks here. There's an orange triangle that points to the center figure of the rotating disc, so it makes it slightly easier to read. However, because of its position, it is covered by the hands a reasonable amount of the time, certainly once per hour, and then a couple of times a day, it's covered for a couple of hour stretch, including right in the middle of the day. So a 24-hour hand would be probably a more practical solution, but I do like the way that this looks, and I think it's an interesting inclusion here, but it's almost a better kind of day-night indication type situation than it would be a traveler GMT type of complication. This second hand also brings in a nice bit of orange to the black dial as well, which I really like. The counterweight of that second hand gets that lollipop shape on the other end, and that is filled with lume. So being that it's on the kind of non-business end of the second hand, it does add a bit of visual clutter to the situation here. Though again, I do like the way that it looks, and it is a feature that we've seen carried through a lot of different Unimatic watches. So it's a feature that's kind of a signature to them. The dial gets each of the hours marked in Arabic numerals, and they are printed onto the black dial. Overall, I think this is a really handsome design, and on paper, it's really practical. The proportions of everything, however, feel slightly too small, and I say that because the dial itself sits way under the crystal. There's a part of the O-ring seal that's a part of that protection system that we talked about earlier that you can see sitting between the dial and the case itself. So I think that that pushes the dial down a little bit further. But when you compare it to other watches, other tool watches, other GMT watches, other dive watches, anything like that, this doesn't have that same kind of pop of contrast and legibility that you would like to see. So I feel like this is a design that could have worked better had they gone with a large 3, 6, 9, 12, just the cardinal markers labeled here. But that's largely just personal preference. This is a legible, usable watch, just not quite as much as other watches, including their own other dive watches, which have these really great large hour markers, circular hour markers that are highly legible. This is being pitched as a highly functional tool watch, quite literally. So these are things that I think are fair game to bring up when assessing the practical nature of the watch as a whole. Overall, I love the concept of this watch from a high level. I just think the execution could be tightened up in a few small areas. But more than anything, I'm really excited to see how they expand and build on this tool watch concept that they're introducing here. I think this has a lot of potential, and again, I love the idea of marrying their beautiful aesthetic that they have developed with an overly engineered tool watch function set. Now, this watch is priced at 525 euros, which is around $560 at this moment. So it's not expensive, but I certainly wouldn't call it cheap by any stretch either. This does feel rather premium in the hand. I think there's a lot to enjoy here with the case and with the bezel. This feels like a premium product from them. And with the use of the quartz movement, I think there's less potential for something to go wrong with some of the other automatic type movements that they have been using. I look forward to putting this watch through more of its paces. This is just kind of my first impression of the watch. You can keep an eye out for more details on this watch over at thedeeptrack.com. I'll leave a link to that down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this watch and on Unimatic in general. What do you think of the design? Do you have any experience with these watches? Drop your thoughts down in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. And if you enjoy this content, a like and a share goes a long way. And a quick reminder that this channel is supported by viewers like you. I'll leave a link to our Patreon down below. That'll do it for this one. Thanks so much for tuning in. And until next time, take care.